Good day, good day. Once again, this is Pastor Theo with another mini midweek meal. It's been a few weeks since I had the opportunity to do some of these videos, and I want to make sure I got back to work. I want to talk about something vitally important in the church, and that is the topic of giving. There are many views on giving, what we should give, how we should give, and I want to do some teaching these next few weeks to give us a better understanding of why it is important that we give, but more importantly, what should we be giving and how should we be giving it? Because there are whole ministries and pastors and ministers that travel around and on YouTube that talk about how important it is that you tithe, and that almost your financial well-being, your spiritual well-being, almost your faith is tied to the fact that you must tithe. And that's something that we don't see in the New Testament. And so I really want to talk about some of those things, but I'm going to start this week by talking about what demeanor, what disposition we should have in our giving. So in 2 Corinthians, starting in chapter 8, Paul is speaking to the Corinthian church, and he's talking about his time in Macedonia and how the Macedonian church, how they were very gracious in their giving. That because of the fact that they had heard the gospel and all that that meant to them, it compelled them to give to the poor. That when there was a need, they were gracious and liberal in their giving. And now what Paul is wanting to do is he wants to spur on the church in Corinthians to be similar, to give just as liberally. And what happened was the church in Corinthians, they made a commitment to give. And so it's not that Paul is there at the church at the time and they collect the offering the way we would do. Normally, what they would do is they would send word ahead. They would make a yearly commitment, an annual commitment, and then each time during a certain year, someone will be sent to collect that gift. And what we find in chapter 9 is Paul sending ahead Titus and others to go to the church in Corinthians to prepare their gift. Because he says, I don't want you to be caught off guard. Maybe you made this commitment a while back and you forgot, or you made the commitment at the time. Maybe your financial situation was better off than it is now, and you're second guessing. There could be lots of reasons. But he was saying, when we come to you, there may be some of these Macedonians who come to you, and we don't want you to be put to shame, or us to be put to shame, because there was an expectation that we would receive this gift that now you are ill prepared to give. So he says, I want y'all to be prepared. But he lets them know the manner, not just the matter, the gift itself, but the manner, the way in which they give the gift is important. And we see this in chapter 9. I'm going to read this, chapter 9, verse 5. And it says, therefore I thought it necessary to exhort the brethren to go ahead of time and prepare your generous gift beforehand, which you had previously promised, that it may be ready as a matter of generosity and not as a grudging obligation. He says, I want to make sure that when you give this gift, number one, you already made a commitment to give the gift. So we are going to now hold you to that. But we want to make sure that when you give the gift, it is out of generosity, not out of grudgingly obligation. In that grudgingly obligation, that's what we're saying in the English, but in the Greek, what it actually means is that there's two words. It's pleonexania, which there's a word plion, which means more, to receive more, and the exo, to have. So together it's saying to have more. So what he's really saying is, I don't want you to give for the sake of having more. I don't want you to give with the expectation of having more. You give out of generosity. You don't give to receive. You don't give to get. And that is important because we have a lot of false theology, poor theology, and I'm going to break down some of these scriptures next Sunday, where scriptures are manipulated, distorted to teach a doctrine that you give in order for your giving to be multiplied back to you. Whatever you give, it would be multiplied back to you. But what Paul is saying, we should give not expecting return. It is a gift. You don't give a gift with the expectation of receiving a gift back. You freely give the gift. So he says it should be out of generosity, not out of grudging obligation. And then he goes on to give a parallel talking about reaping and sowing. And it says if you sow sparingly, you're going to reap sparingly. And if you sow abundantly, you're going to reap abundantly. And that word in abundantly in the Greek talks about blessings. So it's literally translated to who sows sparingly will reap sparingly. And for the one who sows in blessings, blessings will be reaped upon you. And so, but we don't know from the Greek word, we can't just say that the blessings is financial. That's what we preach to people. That, hey, if you give this financial blessing, you will receive a financial blessing. That's not what this is saying. Because remember, they're giving to the poor. And what we're going to read later on in verse 10, it says, now may he who supplies, he will supply the seed to the sower, and bread he will also supply, and he will multiply the seed that has been sown and increase your fruits of your righteousness. And the fruit of your righteousness is not limited to those financial things. It's he will provide everything that the believer needs. And then once we have been provided those things, when we sow those things, when we freely give those things to those who are in need, so putting it in your a Roth IRA would be culturally wise, but that would not be what he's talking about in terms of sowing. When he's talking about in terms of sowing, he's talking about that which you freely give to those who need. It does not benefit you. And it doesn't mean your family either. So you giving it to your parents, that's not what this is talking about either. That's still connected to you. We're talking about giving unto the poor. We're talking about giving to where there's a need, giving to a stranger, because that's what they were doing. That's what they were being compelled to do. And he says that when you freely give, and not just your finances, because it says he who supplies seed, but doesn't specify what that seed is. It is all the things that he has provided. Even because when we show mercy to others, when we show love to others, when we show kindness, and when we do those things by also giving financial blessings, all those things come from God. And all those things in which he's given us, as we freely give those to others, he then multiplies it to us, not that it would be back to us for our own good, but that we would freely be able to give. So there is a sowing and reaping that takes place. The difference is when we have a theology that says that if you desire more, if you are in need of more, what you need to do is sow or give unto someone else, because then you will get that back. That's not what this is saying. This is literally saying the opposite. Don't expect. So it's talking about two different things: that which happens, but also what's the motivation. What is your motivation for giving? Are you giving out of obligation? Are you giving out of fear? Are you giving out of duty of law? Are you giving because you have an expectation to get back? All those are wrong motivations. And what I'm going to do next week is begin to look at some other scriptures that have been used to perpetuate this theology, this false doctrine, that thing, it can be multiplied back to you. And so I think it's vitally important that what we should get from this text primarily is not just the giving. Giving is important. That's what Paul was saying. I'm coming to collect this gift. But what was also important is, what is your disposition? What is your motive? What is your mindset and your spirit in giving? Are you making a spectacle of it? Are you giving to get? Are you giving because you feel obligated? We have no choice but to give. He's like, I don't want you to feel that way. I don't want you to do it under that type of compulsion. He goes on to say later on in verse, I want to make sure I get this because this is important. He uses the word grudgingly, well, at least we use grudgingly in verse 5, where it says, do not do it as grudging obligation. Also, later on in verse 7, he said, so let each one give as he purposes in his heart, not grudgingly or of necessity. That second grudgingly is not like the first grudgingly. The first grudgingly is saying don't do it for expectation of receiving back. The second grudgingly is a Greek word that talks about grief, pain, stress, aching body. It's saying that you should not give if it hurts, if it causes you stress. If you are stressed out, wondering, should I pay my light bill or should I give to the church? He's saying in that context, don't give to the church, because he goes on to say that God provides seed for the sowing, but also bread for food. If God is giving you bread for food, which means that's for you, you should not be giving that to the church. That's for you. If you have bills that are due, if your family needs provision, that's for your family. You should not give till it hurts, as some people may say. You should not give in a way that causes you stress. It literally talks about the fact that when they gave in Macedonia, they were freed up. They already made their mind up. It was purpose in them, and there was a joy because they were already inclined to give. So when the invitation to give came out, it was boom, here you go, because I've already made it up in my mind to give. It's not do I want to give? Because if you got to if that's how you feel, keep it. It should not be grudgingly. It should not be painful. It should not vex you or cause you stress. Our giving should be cheerful. So that is something that's important, because sometimes we're guilted into it. We are feared into it. We feel obligated and we're pressured into it. And that is not the type of giving that God desires. So please continue to join in these next few weeks as I teach on this subject. I think it's going to be vitally important. Once again, this has been Pastor Theo with another mini midweek meal. Take care. God bless.